Good morning. Welcome to Backchannel. It's the 8th of February, 2022. I'm Anthony Davis. Welcome to the Anthony Davis Show, as it says right there. This is what we do here on Backchannel. We chat, we look at the news, we kind of talk about what's happening in the world, and we share our feelings with each other. So you can join me, just get on the web chat, backchannel.tv, and you can message me there. And you can also talk to your Echo show if you've got one. Just say the wake up word followed by say, and then your message. Lots to get through this morning. We've got lots to talk about. It's kind of exciting. A lot of interesting things happening in the news today. We're going to take a look at the gerrymandering that's further polarizing American politics. Also, we'll look at why buying a car has become such a pain in the past year. I was going to say a pain in the arse past year because of supply chain issues. And also, continuing our celebration of Black History Month, we'll take a look at the life of Rebecca Lee Crumpler, the first Black American woman physician. So that's what's coming up. You can join in by, messaging and chatting and all the usual stuff in the usual way. If you've got a local newspaper that you want me to review and it's in your area, just let me know what it is. We're going to do that now. We're going to go, where should we go first? Let's go to Abilene in Texas. Never been here before. Producer Carla's in London. She finds these newspapers from, I don't even know I don't know how she does it. I think she cycles around the United States shouting paper and instead of delivering the newspaper, she actually collects the newspapers. There's a photograph of Governor Greg Abbott, and it says, Governor Abbott says a lot about cheese. Governor Greg Abbott touted the Texas economy and answered questions about the strength of the state's power grid as parts of a stopover in Abilene on Monday, as the future site of the Great Lakes Cheese Company. I mean, that's the least of his problems. Seriously. You know? I don't know. Look at women's rights before you look at cheese rights. That's all I would say to him. U.S., but he's going to create 500 jobs, but look, a life without cheese is chaos, as is famously quoted in one of my favorite films, Mouse Hunt. You seen that film, Mouse Hunt? About brothers who inherit the cheese factory from their father. Oh, it's such a great film. It stars Lee Evans and Nathan Lane, and it's called Mouse Hunt. And it's such a good film. They inherit the cheese company. He dies. They inherit the cheese company, and they make cheese string. That's what they do. And so one of the captions is, "A life without cheese is chaos." I highly recommend the movie Mouse Hunt. It's one of my favorite films. It's very, very funny. It reminds me of, do you remember there was that wonderful film in the 80s called The Money Pit? About a house. I think Tom Hanks was in it. About a house that a couple bought that just ended up collapsing because it was just such a bad house. And it was a very good, funny film. So Mouse Hunt is a little bit like The Money Pit. It's like a slapstick movie about a mouse and a house. And the mouse in the house. I love it. U.S. farm income expected to take a big hit. Costs for fertilizer and other expenses to climb sharply. Oh yeah, prices are rising on everything. Everything. Regular stuff, shopping, is going to become so expensive. We really need to be conscious of the fact that we've had it easy for a long time. It's all about to change. And who do you want to blame? We got to blame someone, right? Well, if you consider that the pandemic is obviously a big thing in the middle here, but when we look back on this and we analyze it and we'll see what Donald Trump did with those trade embargoes with China and the like, you'll realize why the supply chain has having the problems that it's got. City Council to vote on dash and body police camera upgrades. The City Council this week will vote on a purchase agreement for body-worn cameras, in-car video equipment, and purchases for real-time intelligence center for the Abilene Police Department. The cost will be over just over $2 million, spread out over 5 years using available police apparatus funding. I mean, I think that's good. I think the more cameras, the better when it comes to policing. I've always thought that. I just wish that the police would use the cameras rather than using their guns, you know? Do you remember that story covered a few days ago, Carla, about the IRS using facial recognition technology, but it was actually just a selfie photo from any camera? Well, they've now reversed the decision. They will not be using the selfie camera to take your photo to identify you when accessing the IRS anymore. I think that was a very good move for, the public. Good old public. My lighting is looking much better today. I think something improved. Not sure what it was, but something improved. Let me just change the color temperature a little bit. Warm it up a little bit. Because it all looks a bit white, doesn't it? I'm going to warm it up a little bit. Does that make any difference? I don't think so. It is what it is what it is. It is what it is. Harry has joined us. Stacey's having pizza and chips and fudge. Michael's with us as well. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to Backchannel. It has made a difference. Thank you, Stacey. Thank you. Yeah, just a little more warmth. That's all I was craving. Not in terms of my personality. I mean, that is as cold as the Ice Queen herself. The Austin American-Statesman now. Water alert came 12 hours after problem found. A question about a delay remains unanswered. Boil notice continues for Austin residents. Yes, nearly 12 hours lapsed on Saturday between the time Austin water officials said they learned of an issue affecting the city's drinking water and the time they alerted customers in a citywide boil water notice. It's unclear whether that response was unreasonably slow. I think it was unreasonably slow. And if so, whether to put anyone in danger through the exposure to water with high levels of turbidity or cloudiness. I was worried that said turdidity. I was worried that something had got into the supply. They'd accidentally crossed the pipes. I was like, I didn't know that turdidity was a word. Those are among the questions the utility has not answered publicly as the boil water notice moves into the fourth and probably final day on Tuesday. Austin Water did not immediately respond to an email from the American Statesman inquiring about Saturday's lag between detecting the problem and telling the public. Well, if you want to live in Texas, you're just going to have to accept the consequences of how the systems work there. It's just, it's all done. They do it their own way. Spotify says CEO says silencing Rogan is not the answer. It says Joe Rogan's mouth has put Spotify in a tough spot. But the streaming giant is apparently not ready to let go of the popular podcast host despite the tense criticism over his anti-coronavirus vaccine comments and racial slurs. This is not going to end well. I'm just going to predict this. This is not going to end well. This will not die down. This is going to end up with some kind of showdown. I promise you. There'll be a showdown. The boss of one of these right-wing networks, I forget what it's called, has offered Joe Rogan $100 million to move over from Spotify to this new network. $100 million over 4 years. Yeah. But I don't actually think Joe Rogan can do anything about it. I think he's locked into a contract. I think the right-wing network might be called Rubble or something like that. Rumble, there you go. Yeah, I mean, but what's so interesting is that the right sees Rogan as a mouthpiece for their messaging. They're like, he'll fit in perfectly over here, which suggests to me that he, in his current form, is an attractive proposition for the right-wing media. There it is. Okay, this one's for you, Stacey. The San Antonio Express News, $230 million for families after massacre is the headline. A federal judge has ordered the U.S. government to pay families of victims and survivors of the Sutherland Springs mass shooting more than $230 million in damages for the Air Force's failure to report the gunman's violent criminal history to the National Firearms Database, which could have prevented him buying an assault rifle. Oh, man. This is just terrible. The district judge, Xavier Rodriguez, included individual awards of $5 million to $6 million for pain and mental anguish for several survivors or estates of those killed. He ordered the government to pay millions more for damages, such as loss of companionship or consortium, pecuniary loss, disfigurement, and physical impairment, and medical costs associated with the massacre. I mean, why are there any medical costs associated with the massacre? Why is there a single solitary medical cost associated with the massacre? Why doesn't the government go, there's a massacre. Don't worry, guys. We've got you. We've got you. Here's a fund. We'll cover all your medical expenses. No, doesn't do that. This the tragedy of this story, is that people have to pay to people with no money have to pay to try and get a semblance of normality back. City calls on companies to support job training. Officials hope about 200 will be ready to work. Will back the Ready to Work program this spring. This is San Antonio's $200 million Ready to Work program. It opens. Dozens of executives from major companies stood together on Monday on the steps of City Hall to throw their weight behind the ambitious sales tax-funded worker training initiative. That's good, isn't it? And also leaders push for Ukraine's solution. This is a story about Biden, obviously. He's now kind of holding to ransom the Nord Stream 2 Russia to Germany gas pipeline. So it'll be blocked if Russia invades Ukraine. And of course, French President Emmanuel Macron, who met with Putin for several hours. And they seem to have, made a little progress, which is good. And also a tribute paid to the baseball player, part of a talented East Side family, Lawrence Didney Johnson, brother of Elijah Johnson, who died at 79. So that's the San Antonio Express News this morning. Let's move on. We're going to Redding, California now, into the record searchlight. They lead with California lawmakers sign off on COVID-19 sick leave. Who knew? When Crystal Orozco got sick with the coronavirus last month, she missed nearly 2 weeks of worth of her salary as a shift leader at a fast food restaurant. She had to ask family members for a loan to help pay her rent. My check was literally $86, she said. I was like, oh my God. Now, Orozco is likely to get that money back. The California legislature passed a bill on Monday requiring many companies to give workers up to 2 weeks of paid time off if they get sick from coronavirus. The bill is retroactive to January 1st, so she could be eligible for back pay for the days she missed when she was sick. Austin, thank you for joining us. Hi, welcome. Nice to meet you. It says at the start of the pandemic, state and federal laws required most employers to give workers paid time off for the coronavirus, but many of those laws expired as more people got vaccinated and case numbers declined. Yeah, here in California, case numbers have dropped by 64%. I mean, we're doing very well. They're actually going to get rid of the mask mandate in schools soon. Amazing. I actually am starting to see the end of this pandemic. I think I'm starting to see the end of it. I'm just starting to see the end of it. I'm not seeing the end of it. I'm starting to see the end of it. So the end of it is still like months away. I'm starting to see that bit of it ending. All thanks to Omicron. Who knew that it would become the dominant strain? If you're vaccinated, piece of cake. State to lift mask mandate as Omicron cases fall, it says. After the 15th of February, unvaccinated people will still be required to be masked indoors. Yeah, good luck with that. Good luck with enforcing unvaccinated people wearing masks and everybody else not wearing masks. Good luck with that. That's going to fail miserably, isn't it? There'll be a huge spike and we'll be back again. And I'll be having the same conversation with you about how I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel anymore. Local governments can continue their own indoor masking requirements, and last week Los Angeles County's health officials said they intend to keep theirs in place beyond the state deadline. Women's correctional facility fostered culture of abuse. Yeah, this is a big story, actually, that's kind of developing inside one of the only federal women's prisons in the United States. Inmates say they have been subjected to rampant sexual abuse by correctional officers and even the warden. The warden, you see, that's the name of the person who runs the penitentiary, is the warden. They were often threatened or punished when they tried to speak up. Prisoners and workers at the Federal Correction Institution in Dublin, California, even have a name for it: the Rape Club. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. An investigation found a permissive and toxic culture at the Bay Area lockup, enabling years of sexual misconduct by predatory employees and cover-ups that have largely kept the abuse out of public eye. An internal Bureau of Prisons documents statements and recordings from inmates interviewed current and former prison employees and reviewed thousands of pages of court records from criminal and civil cases involving Dublin prison staff. Together, they detail how inmates' allegations against members of the mostly male staff were ignored or set aside, how prisoners could be sent to solitary confinement for reporting abuse, and how officials in charge of preventing and investigating sexual misconduct were themselves accused of abusing inmates or neglecting their concerns. I mean, just imagine that. Imagine committing a crime, legitimately being sentenced, going to prison, and then the people who you seek to protect you, the prison warden, the prison guards, abuse their authority and take advantage of female inmates. A sexual abuse epidemic inside the confines of a prison wall where no one can hear you scream. I mean, it's utterly terrifying. Tragically, there's probably a reasonable percentage of people who are going to be like, well, you know, they're prisoners, they get what they deserve. I'm sure that there are people that think like that. Let's move on to the Sacramento Bee. Governor Newsom lifts Omicron rules and indoor mask mandate. Vaccinated Californians can ditch their masks indoors soon. The state's mask requirement for most vaccinated people in most indoor settings will lift on February 16. They can't even do it for Valentine's Day. I mean, you know, all these people going out on their Valentine's romantic dinners and stuff and are going to have to be masked. Why not do it 2 days earlier? The requirement, which began in December as COVID-19 cases climbed, won't be extended again because infection rates are dropping. Unvaccinated people will still be required to wear masks in public settings. And a photograph of some students walking along the Sacramento State Quad outside the library as they return for the first day of in-person learning yesterday. Classes since the winter break have been held online due to the Omicron-19 surge. I mean the COVID-19 Omicron surge, not Omicron-19, because it's actually Omicron 2021. It's Omicron 21. Proud Boys member ousted from GOP panel running for assembly. Oh my goodness, I read about this yesterday. This is terrifying. An acknowledged member of the Proud Boys, a far-right white nationalist group, has filed to run for California Assembly against Democratic incumbent Ken Cooley. Jeffrey Eric Perrin last week filed paperwork for the newly drawn 7th Assembly District, which encompasses much of eastern Sacramento County, including Rancho Cordova, Fair Oaks, Folsom, and Citrus Heights. Perrin last year was expelled from an elected position on Sacramento County Republican Party Central Committee after a report from the Sacramento Bee detailed ties to the hate group. You know, this is what's going to happen, Carla. All of these people who are unsavory, far-right extremists, and associated people, they're all going to run for office. They're going to infiltrate the system. I was having a conversation with somebody last night about whether this is all necessary. Maybe the whole thing just needs to be burned to the ground. And like a phoenix rising from the ashes, a new America will appear. I've tried to explain this to you, Carla, and you didn't believe me. It really, I mean, we really are dealing here with a people who are are just very gullible, I think. I used to think, because, the British people are very cynical. We're very cynical. And I used to think, like in America, you had like, what was the guy with the grill? George Foreman. Used to talk about his grill, and he'd be like, it's the best grill in the world. And people would be like, yeah, George Foreman, best grill in the world. Or Victor Khayyam selling them Remington microshave. And I think, here's an example of the British cynicism versus the American kind of desire to kind of, I don't know I wouldn't call it being gullible. I think that's unfair. I think it's more, I just think Americans want other Americans to succeed, whereas British people want everyone just to fail. And so I think Americans support American industry and American entrepreneurship. And so when Victor Khayyam says, this is the new Remington microshave, it shaves as close as a blade or your money back, I think American people were like, yeah, Victor, I'm buying your shaver. Whereas in England, people be like, nah, prove it. Prove it, Victor. Prove it. I'm very interested in cross-culture and how, because, people think because of the language similarities that, culturally it's similar. And, this is why I wanted to live here, because I wanted to see for myself. It's very interesting to me. I literally could study and read and engage and discuss endlessly on this subject of how humans are different in different countries, but specifically how humans are different in two English-speaking countries. I think it's wonderful. I celebrate the differences. I'm enlightened. I am educated. I'm informed. Overjoyed. In fact. And right now, this is where I want to be. America. Biden says it would be wise for Americans to leave Ukraine. He said yesterday that Americans other than essential diplomats should leave Ukraine amid the Russian military threat. He made his comments during a joint press conference with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz at the White House, shortly after the two leaders met for talks about the simmering crisis. Yes, while they were, at the same time they were talking, you had Putin and Macron doing their talks at exactly the same time. And I was thinking, I wonder if they're all talking about each other. Oh, those two. What about those two, eh? Yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, look, Biden's trying to play it safe, isn't he? He's basically saying, look, I don't want to be responsible for you guys if something happens, so just be safe and leave. The State Department had already authorized non-essential employees to leave and has called on all family members of diplomats in Ukraine to do so. Biden also said there'll be no longer be the Nord Stream 2, a crucial Russia-Germany natural gas pipeline, if Russia further invades Ukraine. International efforts to fuse the standoff over Ukraine intensified yesterday, with Macron holding talks in Moscow. The build-up of over 100,000 Russian troops near Ukraine has fueled Western worries of a possible offensive. And finally, on the front of the Sacramento Bee this morning, leaders at black colleges alert undeterred by bomb threats. It says from her office in Birmingham, Alabama, DeJuana Thompson looks across the street and sees a daily reminder of terror. Her window overlooks a 16th Street Baptist church where a bomb in 1963 killed 4 black girls. Living in the era of bomb threats is not new to people of color, said Thompson, president and CEO of the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute. Nearly 6 decades after that bombing by the Ku Klux Klan, the FBI is now investigating last week's bomb threats against at least 17 historically black colleges. Well, do you know that 16th Street Baptist Church appeared in that documentary I watched last week that I mentioned yesterday about? It was called The Long Road to Washington, or The Walk to Washington, or something. It's a Nat Geo civil rights documentary. It's very interesting. And it was the first I'd seen of this, visually, video of this, of these children being carried out on stretchers from this Baptist church in 1963, and it was very moving. And, the tragedy is that here we are, 60 years later, and there's bomb threats against 17 historically black colleges in the US. This is just going to keep happening. It's more and more and more. It's kind of terrifying, isn't it? The Buffalo News this morning leads with other states drop mask mandates. Is New York next? Hochul to announce next steps on Wednesday. That'll be tomorrow, I guess. Born 3 months premature, built-in lifelong NICU nurse being trained by first caregiver. This is a I see. This is a nurse who herself started out as a NICU patient. Right? She weighed less than 2 pounds when Amy DeSantis first laid eyes on her in the neonatal intensive care unit at the Women and Children's Hospital. The newborn arrived after 26 weeks in the womb, more than 3 months earlier than expected, at roughly the threshold for survivability in 1999. Baby and nurse stayed connected through many milestones during the 2 decades since, including on Monday, when the girl celebrated her 23rd birthday, working side by side with her protege in the NICU in the Children's Hospital. So the nurse that nursed her as a baby in the neonatal ICU is now her supervisor, as she is a trainee nurse herself. Isn't that a beautiful story? It's a beautiful story. Cheryl has joined us. Welcome. Lachlan has joined us as well. Lara has joined us. Justin it's your first time, Justin, on the show. Welcome to Backchannel. Thank you for joining the show this morning. I'm Anthony. We're looking through the morning papers together, seeing what's happening right across the United States on this Tuesday. 2022 could be the breakthrough year for electric vehicles. It says here on the, what paper are we looking at right now? The Buffalo News, that's right. It says sales of cars powered solely by batteries surged in the United States, Europe, and China last year, while deliveries of fossil fuel vehicles were stagnant. Demand for electric cars is so strong that manufacturers are requiring buyers to put down deposits months in advance, and some models are effectively sold out for the next 2 years. I mean, it's kind of amazing, isn't it? My brother's just ordered his first electric car, and I think he put his order in a month ago, and he's got to wait till July to get it. And that's just to lease it. He's not even able to buy it. Yeah, he's got to wait like 7 or 8 months for a lease vehicle. Battery-powered cars are having a breakthrough moment and will enter the mainstream this year as automakers begin selling electric versions of one of America's most favorite vehicle type, pickup trucks. Yes, their arrival represents the biggest upheaval in the auto industry since Henry Ford introduced the Model T in 1908 and could have far-reaching consequences for factory workers, businesses, and the environment. That's right, the Ford truck is a lovely-looking truck, and it's fully electric. And, you know, these things will do like 300-400 miles now on a charge. So it's like gone are the days where you'd have to worry about, like, you know, running out of gas or running out of electricity. My electric car only does 140 miles on a charge, but I think I'm going to be happy with that because I don't really like to go far. I'm not a road trippy kind of guy. I'm just not. I'm not a road trippy kind of guy. 140 miles is plenty for me. Any further than that, and I'll just get homesickness. Just want to come back again. The Star Gazette this morning leads with recreational pot in PA. It says, this is Pennsylvania, obviously, lawmakers have taken the first serious step towards legalizing recreational marijuana, so I'm a little high, marijuana in Pennsylvania. A hearing was scheduled on Monday in a Senate Law and Justice Committee, the first time a legislative committee in the General Assembly has vetted this issue, although legislation to legalize or decriminalize marijuana has been around for years. Committee Chairman Mike Regan, he invited representatives from law enforcement and the criminal justice arena to speak at this first in a series of hearings. I mean, I just think they should legalize it everywhere. I'm just, you know, I live in a state that has legalized marijuana now for nearly 5 years. And it's fine. You know? It's fine. I tell you, I do find it interesting that, you know, America is obviously 50 states, and I live in one of those states that happens to have legalized marijuana, and so therefore I'm allowed to talk about taking marijuana, and I can't get into trouble for it. And it just seems so progressive compared to when I used to be on the radio in England. And you couldn't even suggest for a second that you might have even tried marijuana, because, of course, it was a Class B drug and it was considered to be highly inappropriate for anybody in the public eye or anything to take something like that, especially politicians. I mean, this used to come out all the time, like laughing and joking when they found a photograph of a former prime minister, sucking on a joint during their university years. And they always deny it first. I have never, ever taken marijuana. And then, of course, the photograph comes out. Well, I may have taken it one time, but I have no memory of it. And so then you find out that, like, they're a regular cannabis user. It's like, what's the big deal? It's a plant. A story about Donald Trump. Out of New York, it says, looking out at a sea of faces at a Texas fairground, most of them white. Former President Donald Trump seethed about his legal troubles and blamed them on malicious prosecutors. He said, these prosecutors are vicious, horrible people. They're racists and they're very sick. They're mentally sick, Trump said, before warning his audience, in reality, they're not after me. They're after you. He repeated his charge of racism but skipped over an obvious detail. Those prosecutors are black. His diatribe left the clear impression that Trump, who rode the politics of white grievance into the White House, thinks he can't possibly be treated fairly by black officials. The comments carry the echoes of racist messages that have proliferated in recent years, that black people and other minorities are taking power, and that they will exact revenge on white people, or at the very least treat white people as they have been treated, or as they have been treated. I mean, this is fascinating, isn't it? And terrifying at the same time. You know, to have Trump, a white privileged former president, referring to the people who are investigating him as racist for investigating a white person. I mean, that really just, it pays dividends into the racist treasure trove of Trump one-liners. He really has no self-awareness whatsoever. And also thinks he's above the law. But the line that makes me most frightened, because, these prosecutors, they're very capable of looking after themselves and standing up for themselves. They don't really care, because they know that the law will hopefully protect them. Was the line, in reality, they're not after me, they're after you. Think about that for a moment. That is the former president saying to his majority white following that the black prosecutors are after you. He is inciting violence. He is also prejudicing any case, arguably. I mean, and now, of course, there's all this news about these 20 boxes of White House paraphernalia that was supposed to go to the National Archives that Trump stole and took to Mar-a-Lago. When a president leaves office, they're supposed to just leave office. They don't take anything with them. Everything gets archived and put in the National Archives. And Trump took 20 boxes of stuff and stole it surreptitiously and took it to Mar-a-Lago. And so now the investigators who are investigating the January 6th insurrection with the National Archives are now having to go to Mar-a-Lago and collect it all. And he tears everything up, and which is illegal. As a president, you can't tear stuff up. Everything has to be archived. So they're now saying that they could actually get him on a whole bunch of new charges of destroying evidence, destroying public records. In addition to tax fraud, in addition to inciting an insurrection, in addition to seditious conspiracy, in addition to witness tampering, in addition to wire fraud, in addition, all of these things, in addition to phoning Brad Raffensperger, the Georgia Secretary of State, and saying, Brad, I just need to find, that actually sounds more like Ronald Reagan, I just need to find 11,000 more votes. That's just one more than we need to win Georgia. It's on tape. Other people were listening in on the call. He threatened Brad Raffensperger. He said, people will not look favorably upon you if you don't do this. He required Mike Pence to uncertify the election. I mean, how much evidence do you need? It's as if Donald Trump is going, I'm here, it was me, I did it, catch me, right here, look, there's all this evidence, come and get me. And the Justice Department, the Attorney General is like, yeah, we need to investigate this and find out who did this. And Trump's like, it's me, I'm over here, I did it, me. I'm the guy who did it. And the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, is like, yeah, but we need to look into this, we need to analyze it, we need to look at all the evidence. No, Trump's like, no, it's me, I'm the guy. Merrick Garland really is letting a lot of people down right now. You know, Merrick Garland was, of course, given the job of Attorney General by Donald Trump. So some people are questioning his allegiance. They did the same thing with Robert Mueller, you know, with the Mueller report. They were like, oh, he's got this. Mueller's got this. He's such a career guy. He's got this. And, of course, Mueller let everybody down because he basically got up and said, yeah, there's enough evidence to that's the other thing. The Mueller report is another reason to charge Trump. He said there's enough evidence to charge Donald Trump, but we can't because he's the president. That's what the Mueller report basically said, with Russian collusion. Trump just manages to wriggle out of all of these things because he's got a big mouth and he's white and he's wealthy. I'm trying to find the next newspaper. Oh, the Wall Street Journal is next. Stacy says, my dad drives a Ford truck himself and it only runs on diesel. Well, this is the thing. But now Ford have brought out a new truck to replace that truck if he wanted to, that is a plug-in electric truck. No emissions. Russian figure skater makes Olympics history with quad. This is interesting, isn't it? Kamila Valieva on Monday became the first woman to land a quadruple jump in the Olympics, putting a stamp on Russia's dominant run in the team figure skating at the Games. I mean, I do like watching figure skating, I have to say. I'm not really into sport, and I don't really know anything about how you score points in figure skating. But seeing humans leaping around on the ice with like blades on their feet is quite a wonderful thing. It's the same with gymnastics. I love watching gymnastics. To see humans somersaulting multiple times whilst running at high speed and landing in a perfect landing, it blows my mind. Yes, I saw that. The California American Chinese. Yeah, I saw that. Frontier and Spirit to form discount airline juggernaut. Now, this is very interesting as well. Because, you know, in the United States, the biggest airline is obviously American, followed by Southwest, then Delta, United, Alaska, JetBlue, and then Spirit, the yellow one. Frontier. Frontier is like what? Blue and green? Anyway, Frontier and Spirit are going to merge. Right? They're going to merge. Frontier is going to buy Spirit for $2.9 billion in cash in a deal that would create a discount airline juggernaut. Ultra-low-cost airlines designed around cutting costs and fares by offering a more basic flying experience have upended the airline industry in recent years. The deal unveiled on Monday would bring together two of the biggest such airlines, which carriers say would create the fifth largest U.S. airline and allow them to compete against more aggressively against larger rivals. They say this transaction is centered around creating an aggressive ultra-low fare competitor to serve our guests even better, said the president of Spirit Airlines. Well, he'll make a few dollars, won't he? Out of this, he'll do very well out of this with his share options. So yeah, you won't be able to fly. You won't be able to fly on Frontier or Spirit. I wonder what they're going to call it. Maybe it's just going to be called Frontier and not Spirit. If Frontier are buying it, Maybe they want to own the brand. I don't know, but that would be interesting. I don't think they've announced yet what they're going to do. Sometimes when they do these mergers, they keep them separate for a while, for a year or so, and then they kind of talk about it and they say things like, oh, Spirit is changing. Because this happened when Alaska bought Virgin America. Do you remember? Virgin America was such a great little airline. And Alaska was also a very good airline. And Alaska Airlines bought Virgin America. So there is no Virgin America anymore. There's just Virgin Atlantic and Virgin Australia. But there's no Virgin America. It now belongs to, and in fact, they've repainted all the planes now as well. So all of the airplanes now are taken up because Virgin America, I think, operated exclusively in Airbus aircraft, and Alaska was operating Boeing, and so they basically doubled the size of their fleet. 2 years into the pandemic, shoppers are still hoarding, it says. Bulk buying becomes a habit amid supply uncertainty and inflation. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? It's like if stuff is going to be cheaper now, why don't we buy it now and then, hope that in the future, if prices go up, then we've got a bit of a run on that. I guess that's what people do. The problem I find is that where do you store this stuff? It's all very well buying in bulk, but you need to have somewhere to store it. If you're living in an apartment building in New York, you're not going to have anywhere to put 200 rolls of kitchen towel. NVIDIA, SoftBank call off blockbuster chip designer deal. NVIDIA Corporation and Japan's SoftBank Group Core are abandoning a blockbuster deal for the US semiconductor company to acquire chip design specialist ARM after regulators raised antitrust concerns. SoftBank, which owns ARM, now plans to pursue a public listing for the British-based chip business. Yes, ARM, or ARM, the chip company, they really are one of Britain's biggest success stories. If you were to do research on ARM, aside from financial services, Britain doesn't really produce anything. It's very much a kind of financial center. But the ARM chip was created and designed and licensed out of the UK. And it is in every device you have. Everything from your headphones to your iPhone, your mobile phone, your computer, the ARM chip. It's in everything. And they have made bagazillions. NVIDIA in September 2020 agreed to buy ARM for $40 billion from SoftBank in what would have been the chip industry's biggest deal ever. The nominal value of the deal has risen along with NVIDIA's share price, which has advanced sharply in the intervening time amid booming semiconductor demand. And finally for this newspaper, Warner Brothers sued in HBO Matrix move. It says in the latest battle over streaming, the co-producer of The Matrix Resurrections sued Warner Brothers, claiming the decision to release the movie simultaneously on HBO Max and in theaters breached their contract. It says the suit by Village Roadshow Entertainment Group is a fresh volley in a growing industry fight as big media companies favor streaming over traditional distribution. Warner Brothers' parent Warner Media, a unit of AT&T, put its entire 2021 slate of movies on its sister streaming service HBO Max at the same time as their theatrical release. And do you know, I still haven't watched Matrix Revolutions or Resurrections. I still haven't watched it. Even though I have HBO Max and it's right there. Just not interested. I was going to go and see it in the cinema with my sister and I never did. But it's right there. I could watch it at home anytime. I have no real desire. I tell you what I have been watching. I'm on my fourth sitting off. There's a new Ridley Scott movie called The Last Duel. Do you know about this, Carla? I was recommended to it on Sunday. No, I haven't seen it 4 times. I've 4 sittings to get through it. It's 2.5 hours long. I can't sit for 2.5 hours. I literally have watched it. I'm doing 30 minutes at a time. I'm 3 days in. Right. Yeah, that's right. Hitchcock made short films. But Ridley Scott likes a long movie. And so this is Ridley Scott's newest film. It's called The Last Duel. And it's a very interesting piece because it stars Adam Driver, and it stars Matt Damon and Matt Damon's boyfriend. And I'll be honest with you, these are roles that these guys, you wouldn't expect them to have taken on. They really are quite interesting, unusual roles. It's a period piece. It's set in kind of 16th century Normandy. It's really quite harrowing. There's a lot of pillaging going on. But I have to tell you, it's kind of compelling. It's compelling, and I don't like period drama. It's compelling. It's called The Last Duel, and it's basically about the last ever duel before dueling was outlawed. It's quite interesting. Worth a watch across 5 sittings. You'll never do it in one. It's 2.5 hours long. It's too much. Anyway, I'm 2/3 of the way through it. I have maybe a third or a quarter left. Let's go to the Boston Globe now. They lead with, yes? No, I never saw Killing Eve. Oh, maybe I did. It's a lot of English actors in it because, of course, a lot of it is set in Europe, and so there's a lot of English actors playing roles in it. It's very good, but you couldn't sit through it in one sitting. You just couldn't. It's too much. School's chief resigns. It says Boston School Superintendent Brenda Casilius will step down at the end of the school year following a turbulent tenure marked by major disruptions in learning. So, I think a lot of these schools chiefs superintendents are resigning. I think they are. Did you know that, Carla? In America, they refer to whoever is running the schools as the superintendent. The prisons are run by the warden, and the schools are run by the superintendent. Oh, what, the burning and the banning of books? Yeah, the British press are a bit slow on that one, but they've got their own problems to deal with right now. I see Boris Johnson reshuffled his cabinet earlier today, and he's put Jacob Rees-Mogg, a man who has literally come back from 1876, to be the new head of getting the best out of Brexit and international trade. I mean, who would do business with that guy? He is very rich. I think that's how Boris Johnson did it. He's like, okay, who is the richest person here? Put him in charge of trade and Brexit, making the most out of Brexit. It's going to be a disaster. And then all of Boris Johnson's aides have resigned in the last week. All gone, like fresh slate. And he's brought in Gito Hari. Oh my goodness. I mean, what a mistake that's going to be. Do you know anything about Gito Hari? Oh, he used to be a reporter, a TV news reporter. He started out as a journalist on ITV. And then he became like a spin doctor and, a kind of political advisor. But yeah, I used to watch Gito Hari do news reports when I was younger on television. He was always in London, he was like ITV London. Gito Hari. Now he's Boris Johnson's main advisor. Lander quits science post after inquiry. Now, I was very pleased to hear this, actually, yesterday. This is when President Biden tapped Eric Lander as White House science advisor a year ago. He tasked the renowned genomics researcher with reinvigorating American science. Following Lander's stunning resignation on Monday evening, however, the question is no longer whether he'll reinvigorate the U.S. science enterprise, it's whether he stood in its way. After an all-staff apology for abusive workplace behavior, Lander resigned, which Politico first reported. In an email, Lander admitted speaking in a disrespectful and demeaning way, acknowledging he had failed to set a respectful tone for the office and his actions reflected poorly on the administration. In an interview, White House aides and outside research experts worried that the controversy will delay or undercut several of the administration's key scientific priorities: appointing a new biomedical research chief, relaunching the cancer moonshot, retooling federal pandemic preparedness, and creating a department, Advanced Research Projects Agency for Health, for medical breakthroughs. Yeah, I mean, the reason I find this interesting is because Joe Biden, at the very beginning of his presidency, said that if there's anything that is like this, somebody who is disrespectful or irresponsible or takes advantage of their position in his government, they'll be fired on the spot. And yet this guy, everyone complained about this guy, Eric Lander. They all complained about him. He's a science genius, but unfortunately, as you probably know, what comes with genius is insanity, short temper or frustration, or, because this is why these people are a genius. They often don't have great social skills. Have you met a scientist with great social skills? And so my point is that he might have been great in the job, but he still has to work with a whole team of people, and he was horrible to them. It was horrible. And so once they got 1 or 2 or 3 complaints, they should have fired him, and they didn't. They investigated him, which contradicts Biden's claim that anybody will be fired on the spot. So eventually, after this report came out saying that he was indeed abusive and inappropriate and aggressive, they probably said to him, look, we're going to fire you. Do you want to resign? And he was like, I'll resign. That's often what happens. When you hear someone has resigned, it's because they've been asked to resign. They don't just resign. It's like, we're going to fire you. Do you want to resign? I'll resign. It's just easier for them to kind of get another job if they resigned rather than were made to resign, or they were resigned. Lines drawn over lanes. It says bikers get more security, but as traffic returns, drivers and shop owners question loss of parking. Yeah, I'm just going to flick the switch on this so you don't hear the sound so much of my air conditioning, which is currently running. There's a little bass roll-off switch on this microphone, and if I turn it off, you don't hear the air conditioning. It's kind of clever. Did you notice that? Did you notice it for a second? No. So yes, riding a bike on the streets around the public garden once felt like a dangerous endeavor, only accessible to the most fearless and experienced cyclists. Enter COVID-19. The city of Boston expedited a plan to build protected bike lanes on all 4 sides of the garden. It was a reality by the end of 2020. So that's kind of good. Bikers get more security. But as traffic returns, drivers and shop owners question the loss of parking. Care workers feel the strain of pay delays, and increasingly paid leave is granted after miscarriages. That's interesting, isn't it? Pandemic spurs push to expand benefits. So that's the Boston Globe for you. Charles has joined us for the first time. Hello, Charles. Welcome to Backchannel. I'm Anthony. Stacey says, I can watch a movie for 6 for 11 hours and watch a movie. Interesting. Oh, she can sit. Interesting, yeah. I can sit happily and watch a movie for up to probably nearly 2 hours. I think I could sit and do that. Admittedly, with like 4 pauses for the lavatory and for chocolate, for cake. I went to IKEA yesterday and I bought 6 large bars of chocolate. Big bars of lovely IKEA chocolate for the refrigerator. I was like, I am winning. Winning! Okay, next up and finally on the old newspaper front, we have the Standard Times for New Bedford. They lead with high above deck. A fisherman finds himself high above deck as he climbs the main mast of a fishing boat docked in New Bedford. Alehouse co-owner buys the nephews. I guess that's some kind of bar. It's like a family restaurant. Women's prison fostered culture of abuse, as we discussed earlier. This Associated Press investigation has uncovered a permissive and toxic culture at the Federal Correctional Institution in Dublin, California. So there we go. Those are the newspapers on this on this Tuesday morning. It's the 8th of February 2022. I'm Anthony Davis. A reminder that Backchannel has a growing list of shows, including Haley and Allison live, waking you up in the morning with lots of laughs, and their one-star cinema review, or Live Every Day with Liv Harrison, live from Texas, celebrating the little things in life with plenty of coffee. Or what about the charming and funny Hal Rudnick, whose program Your Pal Hal directly follows this show in an hour's time. Oh, hang on, we do have some more newspapers. Did I not get through them all? Yes, we do. We've got the Los Angeles Times. What was I thinking? Got to do the LA Times, because of course that has a big story about the Super Bowl. It's Super Bowl weekend this weekend on Sunday. I finally, it's taken me 5 years of living here to realize what the Super Bowl is and like what it means to people and how important it is. And there's a photograph of the SoFi Stadium empty ahead of the January 30th game between the Rams and the 49ers. And it says architectural studio HKS vertical focus pushed accessibility at every price point. So they reckon that even the cheap seats are VIP. This is when it comes to the design innovations of football stadiums in recent years. It would seem that a good deal of the innovating has been reserved primarily for the luxury suites. Florida's Hard Rock Stadium, where the Miami Dolphins play, features so-called living room boxes stocked with recliners and private television screens. At Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara, the arena the San Francisco 49ers call home, a landscaped rooftop reception terrace shaded with solar panels offers views of the game, as well as Silicon Valley for those with access to the Suite Tower. It says at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City, the owner's suite comes with football-themed stained glass. But apparently, here at the SoFi Stadium, they have dreamy views. Everybody gets a good seat, apparently. No matter where you're sitting, you get a good seat. Even the upper decks. So the thing about this new SoFi Stadium, is it SoFi or Sophie? I'm not sure. Maybe it's SoFi. But the construction is in like metallic, and so it glistens. So when I'm up climbing the mountains, hiking, looking down on the city, I can see the SoFi Stadium from miles and miles and miles away as it glistens in the sun. And it looks like a spaceship has landed in Los Angeles. It's really interesting. Also, on the front of the LA Times, health bill died, but fight goes on. Yes, no bigger litmus test in the California Democratic Party than when a politician stands on a single-payer healthcare. But the anemic performance and unspectacular demise last week of another bill to launch the model in the Golden State shows that may be all it is. Yes, bogged down by political tension and unanswered questions about its enormous price tag, legislation to guarantee medical coverage to every resident by levying billions in new taxes died in the Assembly without a floor vote. They say the debate isn't over for single payer in California. It's not going away, even if bills go nowhere at all. Well, they are trying to work out how to do this, aren't they? California really is a trailblazer for progressive political thinking. It's one of those states that really it's just always first. Should we do the news update? We've got the podcast that I do, which is a daily podcast, and you can get it wherever you get your podcast. And it's basically 2 minutes of news from around the United States. You can subscribe if you fancy, but we'll have a little listen to it now. Here it is.
It's Tuesday, February 8. From the Volley Network, this is your daily US news update. I'm Anthony Davis. Donald Trump's incendiary call at a Texas rally for his backers to ready massive protests against radical, vicious, racist prosecutors could constitute obstruction of justice crimes and backfire legally on Trump, say former federal prosecutors. Trump's barbed attack was seen as carping against separate federal and state investigations into his efforts to overturn the 2020 election results and into his real estate empire. Trump's rant that his followers should launch the biggest protests ever in 3 cities should prosecutors do anything wrong or illegal by criminally charging him for his efforts to overturn Joe Biden's victory or for business tax fraud, came at a 30th of January rally in Texas, where he repeated lies that the election was rigged. Legal experts were astonished at Trump's strong hints that if he runs and wins a second term in 2024, he would pardon many of those charged for attacking the Capitol on 6th of January last year in hopes of thwarting Biden's certification by Congress. Former Nixon White House counsel John Dean attacked Trump's talk of pardons for the rioters as the stuff of dictators and stressed that failure to confront a tyrant only encourages bad behavior. Taken together, veteran prosecutors say Trump's comments seem to reveal that the former president now feels more legal jeopardy from the 3 inquiries in Atlanta, Washington, and New York, all of which have accelerated since the start of 2022. Your daily US news update is part of the Volley Network. To hear my live daily morning show, ask your Amazon Echo device to open Backchannel.
There is the US News Update, and as I say, you can get it wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Anthony Davis, this is Backchannel, and welcome to the show. I've got like a little thing here. Is that on my screen? I can't see. I feel like there's like a... Oh yeah, it's a little piece of dust. It's just dust. I'm not really a stickler for dust. For some reason today, like I'm wearing black and you can see me. Like today, it's like the camera's just working a bit better. I don't know what it is. Kind of amazing. It's the 8th of February, 2022. Welcome to Backchannel. I'm Anthony. You've got me for another hour. We're talking about the news, the newspapers. Terry has just joined us. Isaac has joined us as well. Welcome to Backchannel if you're first. Stacey says my doctor will watch the Super Bowl on TV for me so he can tell me how everything goes. That's a really good idea. Stacey has to leave now, but thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. Really appreciate it. We're just looking through a few more morning papers. Couple more. The Modesto Bee is next. They lead with Thurlock to vote on hiring ex-Stanislaus CEO as city manager. Okay. I'll take your word for it. An amazing photograph of Yosemite. The kind of El Capitan Yosemite National Park. And it says the firefall from Horsetail Fall in Yosemite Valley glows after the sun dips below the horizon. Conditions need to be right. Skies need to be clear just as the sun sets. Mid-February allows the correct positioning of the sunset, and water needs to be flowing from the fall. And basically what's happened is the water is reflecting the sun as it falls off this huge mountainside, and it all looks like fire. All the water looks like fire rushing off the side of the mountain, and it's not. It's water reflecting the sun. It's really interesting. It's a beautiful photograph. Ingrid, thank you for joining us. Welcome to Backchannel. It says it's almost... What? I have actually been to Yosemite National Park, and I drove there, and I think it took 6 hours to drive to Yosemite National Park. I took my daughter, and we went in the winter when it was snowing, which was probably a mistake, but it looked beautiful there. And we went specifically to see El Capitan and to see everything and, have a lovely kind of snowy experience. But unfortunately, a snowstorm was coming in, and so they said to us, look, you can stay here tonight, but if you want to get out, you need to leave in the morning. You can't stay for 2 or 3 nights like you're planning because you won't be able to leave. We're going to be snowed in for a week. So that's what we did. We arrived, we had a little look around, we had a bit of dinner, we stayed over, we woke up early in the morning so we could have another quick look around, and then we got in the car and drove 6 hours home again. Huge success. It's almost firefall season in Yosemite National Park, when the Horsetail Fall can glow with the setting sun for a limited time in February. Day use reservations to enter Yosemite won't be required like they were during last winter's firefall. Once inside Yosemite, there's no special parking permits or other reservations needed to see it, but some viewing locations will be off limits to manage crowds and face masks are required. Conditions have to be right: enough water, clear skies to catch a glimpse of the thin, seasonal waterfall looking like a streak of lava pouring over the eastern edge of El Capitan, in Yosemite Valley. Part of the reason why I went is because I actually wanted to take a desktop picture for my Mac. Because, the Mac operating system over the years has used El Capitan as the background and has used Yosemite National Park as the background. And I wanted to take a photograph myself to use as the background on my Mac that was Yosemite. And I did. I took an amazing photo. I'll send it to you, Carla. Maybe you could make it your background photo and be like, I know someone who took this. I'm such an Apple guy, and the idea of taking an El Capitan kind of I was going to say paranormal. What's it called? Panorama. Was just really exciting for me. And that's what I did. That's what I took. I couldn't believe it that I had access to this vista. And it looked like the one on my computer. As school mask protests led to spread of false claims and threats. This is interesting. It says protests against mask rules in the Oakdale Joint Unified School District last week interrupted learning, sparked the spread of false information and prompted threats towards employees, according to Superintendent Dave Klein. Consequently, changes are being made. It said the district cancelled its scheduled school meeting for that evening over threats made to trustees and employees. The county school district is legally required to follow rules on masks set by California Department of Public Health. Of over 5,000 students in the district, hundreds protested the district's enforcement of state rules. I mean, just let it go, will you? These are the rules. There's a pandemic. It's not like it's a joke. It's an actual thing. It's a real thing. Let's move on to this subject of gerrymandering, because it's something I've been wanting to talk about. It's kind of interesting, and if you want to join in, Ingrid or Terry or Isaac or Charles or whoever's watching or listening right now, Lachlan, Cheryl, Lara or Justin or Austin or Harry or Michael, whoever's listening and watching and wanting to join in, you can just wake up your device, say the word say, and then your message. And you can also go to backchannel.tv and do the same. Carla, I'm sending you the photograph I took at Yosemite National Park. I have it right here. And it's the picture that I used as my computer desktop image. And I was very proud of it. I was very proud of it. And I had it in widescreen on my computer, full screen. And I was like, wow, I took that. That's the kind of guy I am. It's pretty, right? Isn't it beautiful? I've also emailed it to you so you can make it your desktop image. Because you just have to right-click it and say make desktop image. It's very easy. I sent it to you on your Mac. Let's look at gerrymandering, because this is something that I don't think people really fully understand. I mean, I probably don't really fully understand it either. This is something we need to kind of really get into to understand what's going on and how democracy is being undermined in America. Because there's this cycle of redistricting, and many experts predicted a gory gerrymandering apocalypse. They warned redistricting alone could determine control for the U.S. House for the next decade, and that Republicans once again had the upper hand. They feared another unhappy ending with maps rather than voters determining election results, a sequel to an influential GOP-directed effort a decade ago. But read the latest reviews, and there's been a bit of a plot twist of sorts. Democrats avert a total redistricting doomsday, pronounced Politico yesterday. Surprising, declared NBC News. Indeed, by some online counts, it's the Democrats that could come out ahead after redistricting, perhaps netting as many as 3 seats heading into the midterms. If this trend continues, some observers calculate the national congressional map could be as balanced as it had could be as balanced as it had been at any time since the landmark US Supreme Court cases of the 1960s sparked the reapportionment revolution. And that would be quite an unexpected turn. Republicans had monopoly power to draw 187 congressional seats, while Democrats had complete control over just 75. Many Democrats expect to battle not only historically stiff midterm wins, but also to run uphill on maps tilted towards the GOP. Here's the problem with that analysis, they say. First, it's premature. Only 31 states have finished drawing. And Republican lawmakers in Tennessee and New Hampshire have passed maps that erase Democratic seats. Tennessee Governor Bill Lee signed the proposal in his state, while New Hampshire's proposal awaits its governor's signature. GOP lawmakers in Florida and Missouri are still debating exactly how aggressive their gerrymanders should be. Meanwhile, litigation could change the picture in 7 states. Even in states that have enacted maps. Late last Friday, North Carolina's state Supreme Court overturned a congressional map that many analysts believed would gift Republicans at least 10 of the state's 14 seats. I mean, don't you think that all of this is ridiculous? Think about it. It's like it's a system that is broken, that is failing the people, that is undemocratic, that is trying to be tweaked on a political and partisan level, using a political court to settle arguments. There is nothing fair about it. There is nothing legitimate about it. There is nothing representative about it, or proportional about it. The whole thing is theater. The whole thing is a disaster. And all it means at the end of the day is that you and I are going to have less representation in Congress than ever. Because the maps are designed to help political parties win and not for people to get the number of representatives that they deserve. And then late on Monday, and this was the one that really concerned me last night, the US Supreme Court restored an Alabama congressional map that a lower third court had ordered reworked to more accurately represent the state's racial diversity. That shifted a seat from red to blue to red again, and ended Democratic hopes that it might also create additional black opportunity districts in Louisiana and South Carolina. So basically, the Supreme Court have blocked the Democrats' desire for black people to be proportionately represented in Alabama. That's what's happened. So now, I mean, yeah, it happened. The Supreme Court did it because the Supreme Court is weighted. It's a conservative court, which in my mind means it's not a court at all. It has to be half and half. Should be the law. And of course, any of this stuff will end up in the Supreme Court, including all of Donald Trump's misdemeanors will all end up in the Supreme Court. And what will happen is they will favor Donald Trump in the same way that the Senate acquitted him of 2 impeachments. Pending cases from New York, drawn by Democrats, Ohio by the GOP, could unravel similarly lopsided maps and dramatically rework the calculus again. Second, the punditry doesn't align with the facts. A rigorous new study by 3 top scholars finds that while the US House map has a fairer partisan balance than it did a decade ago, it still remains skewed in favor of Republicans. But the thing is, the country is not skewed in favor of Republicans. As a whole, the country does not lean to the right. And more importantly, looking at redistricting solely as a red versus blue horse race distorts what a partisan bloodbath this cycle has actually been. When the US Supreme Court halts the new map in Alabama, after all, what's important is not that it costs Democrats a likely seat, is that it perpetuates the historical underrepresentation of black voters. This is what I was saying, it's black voters of color in Alabama and Texas and Georgia, but also red state Democrats and blue state Republicans who end up shortchanged and underrepresented. And when wildly uncompetitive districts turn low turnout party primaries into the only race that matters, gerrymandering accelerates our already toxic polarization and pushes policy to extremes. And this is what we're dealing with now. The whole thing is made up. It's a made-up construct by lawmakers. So why can't lawmakers just start over? And this goes back to my thing I said at the very beginning of the show. Maybe it's time to burn the whole thing down. You know? Maybe we need to get to a point where we recognize that none of it works. And maybe someone like Donald Trump winning in 2024 will be a good thing for America. You know? Maybe it will finally make people realize that the system was a disaster. And maybe he's a necessary evil. And maybe the phoenix that rises from the ashes will be brighter and more democratic. And maybe we do need another 4 years of insanity, or of extremism, or of a civil war. I mean, have you ever considered these things? Because this is what a lot of people are saying, is that the system is so broken that we need a lunatic to ruin it. He never operated under the law. I mean, these are not my views. My personal views are that we need to stay in the current system. That's my view. And we just need to, you know, deal with it in a respectable legal framework. But I just recognize that it's just, I mean, maybe just this is politics, isn't it? You know, you ask, what is politics? Well, this is politics. Gerrymandering, underrepresentation, all of these things that are causing so many people so much upset. This is just politics. Oh, well, you know, that's the answer. Well, that's politics, isn't it? That's politics. It's interesting if I lean back that the light kind of lights up the back space like that, because there's a who is Donald Trump's running mate going to be? Oh, well, that's a good question. Marjorie Taylor Greene. No, it won't be Marjorie. It can't be Marjorie. It'll probably be... It can't be Pence now because they've fallen out. It could be Josh Hawley. Could be Josh Hawley. You know, he's a very, you know, militant right-wing insurrectionist. He's one of the organizers of the insurrection. Josh Hawley. I reckon it could be him. But it also could be Nikki Haley. If he needs a female, it could be Nikki Haley. Oh, Josh Hawley is a nut. I think maybe I'll go with Nikki Haley. Because maybe Trump will think that choosing her will like address the balance, that kind of male-female imbalance. Unfortunately, she is also has drunk the Kool-Aid and is a total... I mean, she's a little more sane than he is, but she is a complete Trump person through and through. And she has intelligence, you know, she has a brain. Unfortunately, it's just, you know, her views are just wild. She was the ambassador to the United Nations, you may remember. Gerrymandering, after all, isn't just about nabbing seats from the other side. It's about making your own seats safer and less competitive for voters. After a decade of demographic and political change, as this cycle concludes, the number of competitive congressional districts will dwindle to the lowest number in modern times. At the current pace, according to a New York Times estimate, there'll be fewer than 40 competitive U.S. House seats nationwide after redistricting, down from nearly 75 following last decade's redistricting. With 435 seats in the House, that means about one in every 11 will be a contest without a predetermined winner. And that's not exactly adverting doomsday. Both parties have wiped competitive seats off the board, while Republicans overwhelmingly gerrymandered more congressional districts and state legislatures. 10 years ago, Democrats have been just as aggressive this cycle in states where they have complete control. But it's interesting, if it's saying that Democrats are gerrymandering, which of course they are, they're also trying to pass this Voting Rights Act, which will ban gerrymandering. So which is it? Maybe they never wanted to pass the Voting Rights Act at all. Maybe it was all for show. It's just a theory. Are we going to be talking to Hal today? I think we are. I think it's a Tuesday. That's exciting, isn't it? So there's a website that's very interesting that encourages, I encourage you to go look at it, but redistricting basically encourages manipulation of the elections by allowing incumbent politicians to help partisan allies hurt political enemies and choose their voters before the voters choose them. The current process is used as a means to further political goals by drawing boundaries to protect incumbents, reduce competition, rather to ensure equal voting power and fair representation. So if you go to fairvote.org, it talks about exactly this and explains why there needs to be reform to deal with this issue of gerrymandering and the abuse of representation in American politics. Fairvote.org. Should we talk about the trade supply issue? Because this is quite an important thing. And, I do love a chat about buying a car. It's one of my favorite subjects, as you know. I bought a fair few of them. Kimberly Walker is a mother of two in Columbia, South Carolina. She can tell you exactly what that's like these days. She recently found herself having to shop for two vehicles on opposite ends of the market. For herself, she wanted a late model electric Audi, and after looking around, she was able to find a used Audi e-tron at a local dealership. I mean, that's an expensive car, an e-tron. That's the one that Iron Man drives in one of the most recent movies. Yeah. Anyway, she paid $68,000 for this Audi e-tron. She said, "We went back and forth. We were there for 4 hours. They did not budge on the price." For her teenage daughter, Walker was looking to spend just a few $1,000s on an old car. The experience wasn't any better. For 4 months, they tried private sellers and kept losing bidding war after bidding war. CarMax didn't have a single option under $15,000. Eventually, they found a car. There was just one catch. They ended up buying a 2009 Toyota Camry that was actually not running at the time. But the mechanic agreed to put a new engine in it and gave it to us for $3,500. Buying a car has been a frustrating experience over the past year as automakers struggle to find computer chips and other essential materials because of snarled supply chains. Unfortunately, it hasn't got any better. The University of Michigan has been polling customers for more than 50 years and asking whether they feel like it's a good or bad time to buy a car. Today, most people say it's a bad time than ever before in the survey's history. And for people on a tight budget, it's becoming a real crisis. According to Kelley Blue Book, the average car now sells for 42% more than before the pandemic. I mean, it's interesting. I bought a car in the middle of the pandemic. I bought the car, I think, around September time last year. Yeah, September last year. For $4,000 from Craigslist. A fully electric car from 2013, a Nissan Leaf. For $4,000. And it's a brilliant car. And it runs beautifully. Of course it runs. It doesn't run. It doesn't have an engine. Just turn it on. And you go. Electric cars have to have a little green light with a picture of a car to say that the car is on, because you don't know that it's on because you can't hear that it's on because it doesn't make any noise. I love that about electric cars. I'm on. It says I'm on. So I feel like I got really lucky that I found a car that was that cheap, that is fully electric, during a pandemic, when according to this study, the average used car now sells for 42% more than before the pandemic. This car, according to the Kelley Blue Book, should have been around $6,500, nearly $7,000, and I paid $4,000 for it. The guy just wanted rid of it. He was advertising it for $5,000. Nobody wanted it because it doesn't have a very big range. It only does 60 miles. But 60 miles is plenty if you can charge your car at home. Who does more than 60 miles in a day? If you're just pootling around locally and you don't want to expew emissions. So my electric car does 140 miles on a charge, and then this other car that I bought for the au pair does about 60 miles. And it's a great car. Yeah, I think the prices are just going to continue to rise. I mean, I know I could sell my car for more than I paid for it right now if I wanted to, and it's 3 years old. But the other thing about buying a used electric car, people don't really think about buying a used electric car. But it's not like buying a combustion engine car, a bit like this lady buying this Toyota Camry and the guy having to put a new engine in it. You know, a used electric car, there's nothing in it apart from the battery that it could go wrong. So it's not like our attitude used to be years ago if you were buying a combustion engine car and if it had done more than like 100,000 miles, you'd be like, I don't really want to touch that. Stuff's going to start to go wrong. It's not like that with an electric car. If you buy a used electric car that's done 100,000 miles, I mean, that was the other thing that I didn't tell you about this Nissan Leaf that I bought for $4,000 is it had 82,000 miles on the clock. 82,000. But it still feels like a new car because it doesn't have an engine or transmission or any of the bits and pieces. There's no oil or water or radiator or any of the things that are, you know, it's not going to leak because there's nothing in it to leak. There's no liquid apart from screen wash, of course. What's wrong with your car? Oh, the screen wash is leaking. You just need tires. That's it. I was very happy with that purchase. The auto market is still reeling after the pandemic completely upended the balance of supply and demand. Car makers have had to cut their output as they struggle to find critical materials such as chips, creating a shortage of vehicles that has caused ripple effects through new and used markets. And it's now not just how many vehicles they're producing, but what kinds. Automakers have responded to the shortages by focusing on their most profitable cars, meaning the priciest ones. That's the tragedy of this, isn't it, if you think about it? And it's now not just how many vehicles. Sorry, I think I read that. It says compared to a few years ago, companies are manufacturing fewer entry-level sedans and crossovers, and more luxury vehicles, SUVs and pickups, all packed with fancy features. And this trend predates the pandemic, but the chip shortage accelerated it dramatically. Companies have made a defined decision that says, if I only have so many chips, I'm going to put those chips in my most expensive models. And it's pushed the average new vehicle prices up significantly. And because people priced out of new cars turned to used cars, every car shopper has felt the impact. I'm really pleased I moved when I did. I bought my electric car during the pandemic as well. I think I bought it in... How long have I had it? Nearly a year. No, maybe longer than that. I probably had it about 18 months. So I bought my car 18 months ago. And I bought the other electric car in September. So maybe I just managed to get in there quickly before all the prices went up. Thing is, you see, I'm always scrolling. Like, I love to do research. So I'm always looking on the car apps and seeing what's out there. And I'm the kind of person that, like, if I see a deal, I move on it immediately, even though I wasn't thinking of changing my car. That was how it was with my electric car. I was like, I had an electric car of the same model, and in the back of my mind, I thought, like, one day I should change that because there's a few features that are missing on this one that I'd really like, the next model up. And I just scroll randomly. I'm kind of just looking, and I see one, and I'm like, that's the one I want. Boom. Phone them up. Is it still available? Yes. Okay, I'll come down this afternoon. Part exchange my car. They took my car. I took the new car, and it was done. It's interesting, isn't it? It's like you almost need to be like just ready to pounce to find the deal. And I'm the same with buying computers or phones or any technology or anything. I'm like, my friend who's a motoring journalist, his advice is shop the deal, not the car. And I think that's really good advice. If there's a deal to be had, go for the deal. The model of the car is kind of irrelevant. A car is a car. Shop the deal. And if you can find a lease for like $250 a month and it's a really good car, go for it. Because there are crazy deals out there. Linda's joined us. Kobe, Angelo, Kyle, Maddie, thank you for joining Backchannel. It's 10:32 here on the West Coast. It's 1:32 Eastern, and it's the 8th of February, 2022. And we are discussing buying a car after a mother of two in Colombia said that she went looking for two cars, one for her child, a young child, and one for herself, and she ended up spending $68,000 on an Audi e-tron and $3,500 on a Camry that needed a new engine. So we're looking at these supply chain issues. An international chip shortage is squeezing supply chains and inventory, as we know. So interesting, isn't it, that who even knew that cars had chips in them? Who knew that? I mean, it's only now people are saying, oh, the chips. And it's like, well, I didn't know my car had a chip in it. But they do. Cars are now computers. Never used to be, but now they are. And so if you want to know what's wrong with your car, you plug it in, you find out. Diagnostics, they call it. So for a year and a half, a lack of computer chips has been plaguing the auto industry, forcing plants to shut down, delaying auto shipments, and sending car prices through the roof. You see, this is it. I bought my car exactly a year and a half ago, just before the prices went up, because I shopped the deal and not the car. Industry experts say automakers are having trouble getting all manner of parts and raw materials for a variety of reasons, including COVID-related plant shutdowns by suppliers, logistical problems involving the shortage of chips, shipping containers and truck drivers, and difficulty that some suppliers are having filling jobs. And that's making the cost of current supply chain crisis much larger than earlier estimates, leading to much higher costs for automakers and car buyers as well. They say chips are just one of a multitude of extraordinary disruptions the industry is facing, including everything from resin and steel shortages to labor shortages. There's no room for error for automakers and suppliers right now. I mean, from a pandemic perspective, it's probably better to keep your old car longer, isn't it? Than to keep cascading vehicles all the time, isn't it? Surely it's better to kind of... Are we learning? Because there used to be a phrase during the Second World War in England, is that the phrase was make, do, and mend. Do you remember that, Carla? The make, do, and mend concept? So instead of like buying a new pair of fishnet stockings, you would darn your stockings. You would make do and mend. And consequently, the attitude of most British people who are descendants from those who lived during the war is, well, don't buy something new, just fix it. Yeah, this is where the patches on the sleeves and I learned very early when I moved up to America that it's not like that here. They don't make do, they certainly don't make do, and they don't mend. They replace. And I remember when I rented my first place and the toilet wasn't working, and the landlord said, oh, we'll just get the guy to replace the whole cistern. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, it's probably just a washer. And they were like, no, they'll come and replace. And they literally came and they took out all of the gubbins from inside the toilet cistern and they replaced them with all new plastic parts and threw the old bits away. And I was like, wow, that is an intervention. That's quite the intervention. It's just normal. Their attitude is it's probably going to work better and last longer and won't need to be replaced again if you replace the whole lot. Whereas in England, we just replace the one washer and then, something else breaks. So we have to get the plumber back again. So I don't really know which way is better, but I just know that the British attitude is, you make do and you mend things. I like making things. I have old stuff. My computer is from 2011 and it's still going lovely. It's coming on for 12 years old. That's right. Carla bought a refurbished Mac from, I think yours is a 2017 model. Or 2018 maybe. And it's doing lovely. I mean, we really don't need to buy new stuff all the time. We really don't. Temporary shutdowns and slowed production rates are hitting auto plants around the globe, cutting into the supply of available cars. Alex Partners now forecast that the supply chain problems will cause automakers to build 7.7 million fewer vehicles globally than it would have done if they could get all the parts and raw materials they need. That's up from the 3.9 million vehicle shortfall that had been forecast in May. Wow, that's a big jump, isn't it? The tight supply of vehicles, coupled with strong consumer demand, is a major factor driving both the new and used car prices to record highs. Yeah, who'd buy a car now? I mean, Tesla actually put up the prices of their cars recently, by quite a lot. And my brother just ordered one to lease. And unfortunately, he got it. If he'd have been a little sharper and shopped the deal, not the car, he would have actually got that Tesla at the old price when he was first thinking about it. But he's a Libra, so he just takes forever to make a decision. And in the delay of his decision making, it cost him another $3,000 or $4,000 because they put the prices up. And that's kind of unfortunately, where we're at now. I just couldn't commit that kind of money to those types of things. I like buying outright used cars, old used cars. That's just the kind of person I am. If I was driving a brand new leased vehicle, I would be terrified to make a mess in it, to prang it, to ping it, to dent it. I would be like, this isn't my car. I've got to give it back in 3 years' time. And if I don't give it back in this condition, I'm going to be penalized. I wouldn't enjoy driving a car like that. I need to own the car so I can mash it up as much as I want. I could pimp it or I could modify it or any of these things. That's what I would like to do. Anyway, all told, the industry is going to take a $270 billion hit from various shortages, while car buyers will pay $90 billion in higher prices. That's where it is. That's the situation we're facing. But I was very pleased to read earlier that electric cars now are the dominant sales. They dominate the sales. Should we talk about Rebecca Lee Crumpler before we talk to Hal and continue that? Because I don't want to run out of time. Because we're celebrating Black History Month, and so it's kind of important to get these little mentions in of people. Lee has just joined us, along with Maddie and Linda and Kobe and Angelo and Kyle and Ingrid. Thank you for joining us here on Backchannel. Appreciate your presence. I'm Anthony Davis. We're going to talk to your pal Hal in about 5 minutes' time and find out what's happening in his show. Great. So let's do our Black History Month moment, because we can continue after we talk to Hal for a second. But I'm very keen to just, in these last 5 minutes here before we talk to Hal, to say that Rebecca Lee Crumpler was the first Black American woman physician She became a doctor of medicine at New England Female Medical College in 1864, just a year before the end of the Civil War. She spent her career focusing on the care of women, children, and people of color unable to pay for medical services, fighting racism and sexism every step of the way. And in 1883, she published a book called A Book of Medical Discourses in 2 parts, which many historians believe to be the first medical text by a Black American writer. She's one of the pioneering women who changed the world, and one of the most inspiring Black history figures. Have you ever heard of her? I mean, is she somebody that is even on your radar? And this is the thing that's been most interesting to me when we've been doing this Black History Month, discussion, is that I'm learning about people that I never would have come across. She was born in Delaware in 1831. She was raised by her aunt in Pennsylvania, who often spent time caring for sick neighbors. Inspired by her aunt, she began working as a nurse in Charlestown, Massachusetts in 1852. And during her 8 years as a nurse, she impressed many of the doctors that she worked with. Now, these doctors eventually encouraged her to apply to medical school and wrote letters of recommendation. In 1860, she began medical school at the New England Female Medical College, and this school was the first in the US to train female doctors. They received much criticism, with many people claiming that women were too frail or not intelligent enough to practice medicine. She graduated in 1864 as the first Black woman to receive an MD in the United States. At the time, only 300 of the 54,543 physicians in the US were women, and none of them were Black. Her title was Doctress of Medicine. Isn't that interesting? She returned to Boston in 1869, practiced from her home in a predominantly Black neighborhood in the Beacon Hill neighborhood. She provided care for many women and children, regardless of whether they could pay. And in 1883, she published a book of medical disclosures, making her one of the first African-American authors of a medical book. The book is based on notes from her years as a practicing physician and focuses on health advice for women and children. She was a true pioneer, facing numerous challenges as she broke down barriers for women of color in medicine. Until recently, her life has remained in the historical shadows. There are no surviving pictures of her. Much of the information about her life comes from the introduction of her own book. And on the 16th of July 2020, just nearly 3 years ago, there was a ceremony held at Fairview Cemetery in Hyde Park, Boston, to mark her gravestone, spearheaded by the Friends of Hyde Park Library. Her former home on Joy Street in Beacon Hill is part of the Boston Women's Heritage Trail. So there it is, Rebecca Lee Crumpler, physician, author, pioneer, who we are celebrating today as part of Black History Month, and certainly one of the most inspiring figures. And she has a book. If you want to buy a book, you can get it on Amazon. It's called A Book of Medical Discourses in 2 parts. It's got kind of an interesting cover on it. There it is. It's almost time for me to go, but we're going to have a quick chat with your pal and my pal. His name is Hal, and he's on next and is going to grace us with his presence. We'll find out what's going on in his show. I'd really like to know who's on when, because I know that they've changed the schedule recently and there's more people on. It'd be really nice to know exactly who's on when, and then I can talk about it. Because, currently I only really mention Haley and Allison and Liv. But we're on for 12 hours a day, 5 days a week now, so we can effectively entertain you throughout every day of the week. And it would be a pleasure to kind of spend a bit of time with you. So if you want to know who's on Backchannel, then just watch Backchannel for 12 hours, write it down, send me a message and let me know. Maybe that's the way we should do it. Because I sense that this is the great thing about a new platform that is evolving and it's growing. It becomes more interesting as time goes on. Hal and I, of course, we are the original cast. We're the original cast of this show, which means that our number's nearly up. We'll be replaced with younger versions of us.
That's the story of life.
It's the story of life, yes. The story of Broadway.
Mm-hmm. One day you're up, the next day you're down.
Yeah. Next day you're yesterday's breakfast. How are you, pal?
You know, it's not the broadcasting platforms that or it's not me that got smaller. It's the broadcasting platforms. I'm trying to paraphrase Sunset Boulevard. It's not the it's not the stars that got smaller. It's the pictures.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm doing well, Anthony. How goes it? What got your attention most today?
I think we were talking about the price of vehicles, because I love cars. I've always loved cars. And I think that, being in Los Angeles is a dream for me because, people don't really drive in London. They discourage you to have a car in London. They make it very expensive to own a car. They charge you to drive in London each day. You have to pay like £25 extra if you want to drive your car in London each day.
Wow.
So it's very much discouraged. But here, obviously, everyone has to have a car, and even the poorest people need a car because,
it's a car culture.
It's a car culture, and it's the way it is. And so, I've been talking a lot about electric vehicles and how really my view now is that if you could afford it, if you're about to buy another car or lease another car, you cannot even consider a combustion engine vehicle. It's completely socially unacceptable and ethically unacceptable to have a car that takes gas. It has to be an electrified vehicle.
I mean, if you want to be the change, right. You make a great point. Make a great point.
And so I have been driving electric cars for 5 years, and I just bought one for the au pair who didn't have a car or needed to drive the kids around, and I found an electric car on Craigslist for $4,000, and nice. For me, it's the deal of the century. I don't think you're special. I'm telling everybody about this deal.
Yeah.
That's
amazing.
And it's a beautiful car. It looks like it just came off the showroom floor.
Oh, my goodness. For $4,000?
Yeah.
I mean, unheard of. Are there any new electric vehicles, let's go into a little car talk here, catch your eye in particular?
Yes. There's the Kia EV6, which I think is going to be a wonderful addition to the streets, and the Hyundai Ioniq 5.
Is that the one that Jason Bateman is in the commercials for? I know you're not a TV watcher.
I don't know who Jason Bateman is, but
okay.
The answer is probably yes, because I think I might have seen that ad. It's like a guy saying, "No car looks like this. This is like the new." Because it looks like a retro car from the 80s.
Oh, okay, yeah. The Jason Bateman ads has him playing different characters throughout history, and right. Talking about this car is the latest evolution.
Right.
It
might be. I'll have to look it up. But the Ioniq 5 from Hyundai looks like a kind of tank with Space Invader LED headlights. It's a really good-looking car. But the thing I'm most interested about it is that it has the roof is a solar panel. So even when you're parked, the car is charging itself from the power of the sun. And that's the reason why I really like that car.
Tremendous. Yeah, that does seem like an evolution in the technology. By the way, Jason Bateman, one of our great comedic leading men, and does a fine dramatic turn on the show Ozark on Netflix. He's a very, very enjoyable actor.
What was the show with Liza Minnelli that he did?
About the Bluth family. I need to look that up. Why is it escaping me?
Arrested Development.
Arrested Development. Yes.
Yeah.
I had
Carla was just telling me
momentary brain lapse there.
That was
a
favorite of hers. I know the name Jason Bateman, but I don't think I could pick him out of an identity parade.
You know what? He has a movie with Melissa McCarthy, Identity Thief.
Oh, interesting.
Well, you know what? You've got bigger fish to fry. You're trying to touch lives one electric car at a time.
Well, you can only do your little bit. Do you have
Hmm.
an electric car, or do you aspire to an electric vehicle?
You know, I, I have some concerns about long road trips
How far
and
do
an
you go? Because
electric car.
the cars will do 400 miles on a charge now, and if you get one that has a supercharged facility, which most of them do, you can
Hmm.
fully. Most people's bladders are actually smaller than the battery capacity of the vehicle. So the reality is that you can plan a road trip now, which I've done in an electric car, and you plan your stops, and you just charge, and my car will fully charge in like 25 minutes.
Okay, you know what? You're selling me on it, Anthony. I can't make any promises, but you are a great spokesman of the electric car. Have you seen the film Who Killed the Electric Car?
Yes, it's on Amazon Prime, isn't it? It's a very good documentary about how the electric car's been around for far longer than people realize, and how General Motors were kind of lobbied against them continuing to be on sale by the oil industry.
Oh yeah, big oil and the fossil fuel industry is trying to keep this country in the 1950s.
Yeah.
Very sad. Shout out to Senator Joe Manchin.
Well, he has his own oil industry back home to kind of put first, doesn't he? He's so compromised. He
Yeah.
claims it's for his constituents, but it's not. It's his family business which is at stake.
Mm-hmm. The oil, the coal. I remember one of the things that Trump said that made me laugh and cry. Just uttering the phrase "beautiful, clean coal."
That's right. Yeah.
It's like
It's
an
almost
oxymoron if ever I
yeah.
heard
It almost becomes a parody of itself. Because if you say things like "beautiful, clean coal," you're almost saying out loud, "I am lying." Because it's
one.
so obvious that coal is not beautiful and it's not clean. But when you say it, especially out of the mouth of a creature like that, it's almost like he is relishing the fact that everybody knows that he's lying, and that he's just doing it to kind of win over this old school coal miner attitude that, life was better in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s. And that's all they do. That's that entire movement. It's just this
Oh, the time when
retrospective
America
attitude
was great.
when it was white. That's what they
Yeah.
go. That's all it is. It's just whiteness. Make America
Mm-hmm.
white again. And so
Mm-hmm.
all of these feelings, the positive feelings that they have from their childhood or from their youth, is because there weren't black and brown people in any great number that were kind of upsetting the balance, causing us to be woke or to be thoughtful or to have to, consider the fact that it might be illegal to lynch a man who's going for a run and execute him in the road, and then deny it and then admit it and then deny it again.
Yeah. As far as we come, there's still a ways to go. Absolutely.
It is crazy that we're still, 50, 60, 70, 80 years on from all of these amazing civil rights movements, that we're still having these conversations. It blows my tiny mind.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, the fact that someone like Rand Paul will stand in the way of an anti-lynching bill, like that can't be unanimous.
right.
Or we can't be unanimously behind representation in the Supreme Court, and Ted Cruz is offended by Joe Biden saying he wants to put a woman of color, a black woman, on the Supreme Court. Oh, yeah, Anthony, I'm right there with you.
Okay. Nice
Some
to see
lighter
Hal.
fare up ahead. Some lighter fare up ahead on your pal Hal.
I will be watching.
Thank you, good sir. Always great to chat.
Yeah, you too. All right, have a great show. That's your pal Hal. He'll be here in a couple of minutes on Backchannel. I'm Anthony Davis. Thank you for joining me today. I'll come back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Pacific, and we will spend a little more time together. Stay with us for Hal. He's next. Have a good day.